She had nothing, no family, no husband, no help, but the day she touched his broken body was the day he began to heal. And when he finally stood again, he walked straight to her altar. Green Circle subscribe now for more stories that will touch your heart and renew your faith in love and destiny. This is the story of Maria, the girl who bathed a stranger until he stood again. It started on a Tuesday. The clouds hadn't parted in days. Rainwater ran down the gutters like veins, feeding the city's chaos. But in the early morning haze, Maria Okoro adjusted her faded brown uniform, tightened the scarf around her head, and stepped into the private rehabilitation estate that only rich men could afford to die in. Maria was 26, a cleaner, a caretaker, a woman whose life had been reduced to small acts of kindness and soap. She didn't complain, not out loud, because each night, when she rubbed her cracked heels and counted her coins, she reminded herself, "My mother died with no one to bathe her. At least I can give that to others." Inside the estate, the marble floors glistened, the nurses moved like ghosts, and the air smelled of antiseptic and secrets. "You're late again, Okoro," Nurse Lydia said, without looking up. Maria bowed slightly. "I'm sorry, Ma. The bus broke down." "Hurry up," the woman snapped. "You're assigned to room 9 today." Maria froze. Room 9 was the one everyone avoided. That's where Daniel Cole lived. Well, not lived, existed. The man had been paralyzed in a helicopter crash 6 months ago. Once a billionaire CEO. Now he hadn't spoken in 127 days. Not even to his doctors. His family abandoned him. His fiancée transferred his shares and vanished. No visitors. No smiles. Only silence. Some said he didn't want to live. Others said he couldn't. But Maria didn't believe in lost causes. Room 9 was cold, literally and emotionally. The man in the bed didn't blink when Maria entered. His hair was gray at the roots, his face gaunt. A scar ran across his temple like a permanent frown. Maria took a deep breath, placed a water basin on the table, and whispered gently, "Good morning, sir. I'm Maria. I'll be bathing you today." No response. She dipped the sponge in the warm water, checked the temperature, then knelt beside his bed. She didn't speak again. Not yet. She just began to clean him. With care. Not rushed. Not fearful. Not mechanical like the others. Her hands were gentle but firm. And after she washed his arms, she began to hum. A simple lullaby. One her mother used to sing. "When the clouds grow dark and cry, I'll hold you till they dry." The room, once sterile, began to soften. Maria didn't know why she hummed. It just felt human. She didn't see Daniel's eyes twitch. By day 3, Maria had learned the rhythm of Daniel's breath, the shallow rise and fall. She knew when his jaw clenched slightly in discomfort, when his forehead creased at the coldness of the sponge. So she brought a warmer towel, an eucalyptus balm. Nurse Lydia rolled her eyes. "You're wasting your energy," she said. "That man's a statue. You could slap him and he wouldn't blink." Maria said nothing. But that night, she wrote something on a piece of paper, then tucked it gently beneath Daniel's pillow. It said, "You're still here. That matters." On the 5th day, Daniel blinked. Not just randomly. Twice. In rhythm. Maria had just finished rubbing his legs when she said, "If you can hear me, blink twice." She waited. Blink. Pause. Blink. She gasped, dropped the towel, and covered her mouth. "Sir? You heard me?" She leaned in. "Can you do it again?" Blink. Blink. Tears rushed her eyes. Not just from shock, but because for the first time in weeks, someone saw her too. Later that night, Maria walked past the staff room and heard the other nurses laughing. She thinks the billionaire's waking up because of her sponge bath. She probably sings love songs to his feet. Maria turned the corner, quietly, and walked out to the bus stop. Alone, but her heart wasn't heavy, because inside a cold white room, a man who hadn't moved in months had just chosen to blink. And tomorrow, she would bring music again. It was day 6. The rain hadn't stopped. Neither had Maria. She arrived earlier than usual, holding a tattered book of Psalms and a small Bluetooth speaker she borrowed from the security guard. She didn't ask permission. She just wanted to play music. Something slow, something alive. Daniel lay still, eyes open now, blinking on command. That alone was enough to make her feel like the world had shifted. "Today," she whispered, "we try something new." She placed the speaker on the table and pressed play. A soft saxophone poured into the silence. Then she took his hand. It was cold, but not unfeeling. "Can you squeeze?" she asked. "Even a little?" She waited. 1 minute. Then 2. Nothing. She smiled anyway and opened her sponge kit. "That's all right. We go slowly, like how flowers bloom. Not with thunder, but with time." Later that afternoon, Maria passed by the nurse's station. She overheard Lydia again. "Blinking doesn't mean healing," she scoffed. "That girl's dreaming. Probably wants to marry the man and move into his mansion." They all laughed. Maria didn't say a word. She went to the garden, sat on the bench, and cried softly into her hands. Not because she wanted a mansion, not because she believed in fairy tales, but because she was tired, because her back ached, because the only person who didn't treat her like dirt couldn't speak. That night, something changed. She walked into room 9. It was darker than usual. Daniel's eyes were open, wide, alert. She turned on the lamp. "It's me, Maria." She walked to him, gently removed the blanket, and began to wash his legs. Then something strange happened. Her hand reached his knee, and his leg twitched, not reflexively, intentionally. Maria froze. "Was that you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel didn't blink. Instead, he moved it again, stronger. "Jesus," she whispered. "Daniel, you move your leg." She ran out into the hallway, barefoot and breathless. "Nurse! Doctor! He moved! His leg. He's coming back." The medical team arrived, but by the time they got there, Daniel was still again. No one believed her. The nurse rolled her eyes. The doctor scribbled a note, bored. "He's had mild reflex movement before. Nothing meaningful," he said. "Don't get her hopes up." Maria stood quietly by the door, her fists clenched. But in the corner of the room, Daniel blinked, and she blinked back. The next morning, Maria entered quietly. She didn't bathe him first. She just sat beside him. "Why did you stop moving when they came in?" He didn't blink, but his lips twitched. Slightly. It was almost like a smile. "You don't trust them," she whispered. "Only me?" "Blink. Blink." Her chest tightened. Not with pride, but with something deeper. Trust. A man who could not move had given her his trust. Days turned into weeks. Maria came daily, played music, gently worked on his limbs, talked to him, read to him. She brought in photo books of nature. "Let's dream together," she'd say. One day she showed him a picture of a small waterfall in Joss Plateau. "If you walk again," she said, "we go here. I'll cook yam porridge and carry your cane when you get tired." Daniel's mouth twitched again, this time unmistakably. A smile. But not everyone was happy. Nurse Lydia noticed the changes. So did the rehab director. "He responds only to you?" the director asked, folding his arms. Maria nodded, hesitant. "That's unusual," he muttered. "Unprofessional, even." "I treat him like a man, not a diagnosis," Maria replied. "Well, be careful," he said coldly. "If his family sues, they'll sue you first." That night, Maria packed a small bag at home. She wasn't sure how long she could stay at the job, but as she folded her only good blouse, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., garden bench, D. Maria froze. Her hands shook. He had typed. Someone had helped him send a message. It was real. He was coming back. Not just blinking, fighting. Maria didn't sleep that night. The message replayed in her mind like a heartbeat. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., garden bench, D. She arrived early. The sky was soft with mist. The birds weren't even awake yet. She sat on the wooden bench beside the hibiscus shrubs, heart thudding like a schoolgirl's. Then she saw them, 2 nurses wheeling Daniel out, bundled in a thick gray shawl, his head tilted to the side, but his eyes were awake, focused on her. Maria stood. The nurses parked beside her, gave a quick nod, and walked off. "Hi," she whispered. His lips parted slightly. She knelt beside him and reached for his hand. "I got your message." One twitch of his finger, almost a squeeze. "I don't know how you typed that, but thank you." She looked into his eyes. "You're not just healing, Daniel. You're choosing to come back." He blinked once. Then his lips moved again. It wasn't clear, but it was there. More. Maria gasped. "More." She echoed. He struggled. A whisper, hoarse and raw. "Talk more." From that day forward, she spoke more during the baths. She told him about her village, her mother's death, how she wanted to become a teacher, but dropped out after Form 4. She told him how she got the cleaning job, how she took buses for 2 hours just to get there, how she shared a flat with 3 other girls who didn't know her name. He listened, every word. Then came the slip. Maria entered the staff locker room to grab her things. Nurse Lydia and 2 others were there, laughing around the phone. "You've seen this," Lydia said, showing a photo. The Bush girl kneeling by the billionaire's wheelchair like a love-struck slave. Maria froze. It was a picture of her and Daniel, taken secretly that morning in the garden. Her hand was on his. She was smiling. The angle made it look intimate, romantic. The other nurse snorted. "She probably thinks he's going to marry her." Maria stepped forward. "Delete that," she said, her voice shaking. Lydia looked her up and down. "What will you do? Report me? You're just a bath girl." Maria swallowed hard, turned, and walked out. She didn't tell Daniel. But that evening, she was quieter during the bath. No songs. No stories. Daniel blinked. Once. Twice. Then a soft growl. "Why sad?" Her breath hitched. "You noticed?" He blinked once. Maria finally looked him in the eyes. "They laughed at us." Daniel's jaw twitched. They took a photo. Said I looked like a beggar in love. Daniel's hand moved again. He lifted it slowly and placed it on her wrist. Firm. Intentional. "You," he whispered. Strong. Maria's throat closed. "I'm not," she said, "but I'll keep showing up. For you." The next day, Maria found a letter under her locker. A printed notice. No name. No signature. "If you don't resign, we'll tell his family you've been manipulating him emotionally. Don't think you're invisible." Her hands trembled. She clutched the paper and almost tore it in half. But then she remembered his hand on her wrist. His whisper. Strong. She folded the letter and placed it back in her locker. Because she wasn't leaving. Not until he walked. Daniel's progress accelerated. He could now whisper 3 to 4 words. Hold a spoon. Even scribble. Maria made flashcards. Played guessing games. Brought soft puzzles. Every day felt like a school lesson, and Daniel was eager. He laughed once. Actually laughed. It shocked both of them. The nurses peeked in from the hallway. Maria teased him. "Is that your laugh? Sounds like a goat sneezing." He whispered, "Better than your soup." They both giggled. Then one morning, Maria arrived to chaos. The director was in Daniel's room, shouting. 2 men in suits stood nearby. Daniel's old board members. "This girl is unlicensed, unqualified. She's putting the patient at risk." Maria's heart dropped. She stepped into the room. "She's the reason I can speak," Daniel growled, louder than ever before. The room froze. One board member blinked. Daniel slowly turned his head. "She stays, or I go." Dead silence. Maria didn't understand power. Not the kind that walked in with polished shoes and briefcases smelling of ego. But when those men left Daniel's room that day, red-faced, silenced by a man who could barely move, it became clear. Daniel Cole had spoken, and when he did, people listened. Later that evening, Maria received a call from a private number. Come to the East Wing. Quietly. 8 p.m. Alone. She hesitated, heart pounding, but curiosity and a little fear led her there. She was greeted not by Daniel, but by one of his former board members, Mr. Sonny. Tall, clean-shaven, smelled like pine and politics. He didn't sit, just motioned to a sealed envelope on the table. This is 3 million naira. Maria blinked. He continued. Take it. Leave quietly. No press. No questions. He'll be reassigned to professional recovery staff. This whole fairy tale is becoming a liability. Maria said nothing. He leaned in. Let's not pretend. You're a bath girl. You're not supposed to be part of the legacy of Daniel Cole. Maria stared at the envelope. Then she reached into her bag and took out something of her own, a photograph. Daniel, smiling, holding up a puzzle piece. She placed it gently on the table. Do you see this smile? She asked, voice calm. Mr. Sonny looked at it with mild confusion. He didn't smile like this when he had stocks or jets or a mansion. He smiled like this because I brought him a 12-piece puzzle from the kids' ward. She pushed the envelope back. Your money is heavy, but I carry something heavier. His hope. Then she walked away. The next morning, Maria entered room 9. Daniel was waiting, propped up, alert. She smiled. I was bribed to leave you. He raised an eyebrow. She sat beside him. 3 million. His mouth twitched. Told you. You're worth more. She giggled. Are you flirting with me, sir? He blinked. Maybe. She laughed louder. The nurses passing by stopped and stared. Laughter had never echoed in room 9 before Maria arrived. Later that week, Daniel's speech improved. Short sentences, fewer pauses. Maria brought flashcards with verbs, colors, emotions. Blue, he said one morning, pointing to her earrings. Correct. He leaned closer. Beautiful. She rolled her eyes, blushing. Focus, sir. He whispered, I am. But the staff weren't done. Nurse Lydia came to her locker with a warning. You think this ends well? Maria sighed. I'm doing my job. No, you're making us all look bad. Maria paused. Then do better, she said quietly. Lydia stepped forward, eyes sharp. You'll see. Rich men remember caretakers until they don't. Maria smiled faintly. Then let him forget me when he walks. That would still be a miracle. The miracle came sooner than expected. It was a Sunday. Quiet. The rehab center was understaffed. Maria entered with a new playlist on her speaker. Jazz, light percussion, soulful horns. Daniel looked at her as she closed the door. He lifted one hand. Help me stand. Maria blinked. What? His hand trembled. Help. Me. Stand. She rushed to his side. Daniel, your legs aren't. He looked her in the eye. Try. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressed her shoulder into his side, braced her legs. 1, 2, 3. They pushed together. He rose 3 inches, then collapsed back into the chair. They were both sweating, both breathless. But Maria was crying. You did it. Daniel panted, voice raw. Not yet, but close. That evening, Maria found an envelope under her door. No money this time, just a single photo of her washing Daniel's feet. Someone had been watching. A note was written in red pen. You'll never be his equal. Stop pretending. She folded the photo and tucked it into her Bible, not out of fear, but to remind herself. Even Jesus washed feet, and they still crucified him. The moment came without warning. It was a Wednesday. Sunlight streamed to the window like melted gold. Daniel was already seated at the parallel bars in the rehab gym. Maria stood beside him, holding his waist belt. They had tried standing again for 4 days straight. 3 inches, 5 inches, brief moments of glory, always followed by exhaustion. But this day, something shifted. Maria didn't know what it was. Maybe the way he looked at her. Maybe the soft jazz playing on her phone. Maybe God. Daniel gripped the bars. Ready, he whispered. Maria braced. 1, 2. He rose. And this time, he didn't stop. One leg trembled forward. The other followed. A full step. Maria gasped, covering her mouth with both hands. Daniel took another, then a third. She burst into tears. You did it. You're walking. He leaned on the bars, panting. I told you I'd stand. For you. Applause broke out. 3 junior staff members had witnessed it. The news traveled fast. A miracle, they said. A scandal, others whispered. Because later that evening, Maria was summoned to the executive boardroom. She entered quietly. The panel of administrators sat behind a long oak table. Nurse Lydia stood in the corner, smirking. The director cleared his throat. Miss Okoro, you've been accused of inappropriate conduct with a high-profile patient. Maria's chest tightened. He slid forward a folder. Inside, photos, grainy, intimate. Maria massaging Daniel's chest during bath therapy. Laughing with him over soup. Smiling too close. Another voice spoke. We are concerned about emotional boundaries, especially with a man in a vulnerable state. Maria stood still, hands at her sides, eyes steady. Then the door opened. Daniel walked in. No wheelchair, no walker, just a cane. The room gasped. He didn't speak to the panel. He walked to Maria, stood beside her. She is not my nurse, he said, voice firm. She is my anchor. One of the board members stammered. Sir, we... Daniel raised a hand. You left me for dead. She brought me back. You signed forms. She sang to me. You gave up. She gave me life. He turned to Maria. I don't want her transferred. I want her promoted. Maria blinked, stunned. I want her as my personal rehabilitation partner for the rest of my recovery. No one objected. How could they? The man who had once been Bedouin now stood taller than all of them, with a village girl at his side. Weeks passed. Daniel's steps grew stronger, his voice more confident. Maria was moved to a private role, reporting directly to Daniel's care team. No more shared lockers. No more hospital gossip. She now entered through the executive elevator. But she remained the same. She still brought stew from home, still sang during morning therapy, still told him when he was being stubborn. You need rest, she scolded one night. Daniel smirked. You're bossy. I'm your legs, she replied. And heart, he murmured. Then came the offer. Daniel invited her to dinner, outside the facility, a private restaurant with candlelight and music. Maria hesitated. I'm still your caregiver. And I'm still a man, he said gently. She didn't answer. But that night, she wore her nicest blouse. And for the first time in a long time, she wore earrings. He pulled out her chair, complimented her scarf, told her stories about his boyhood. She told him she hadn't been on a date in 6 years. He said he hadn't smiled in just as long. They sat in silence then, until Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small pebble. She stared. It's from the garden bench, where we had our first real conversation. She touched it gently. Why keep it? He looked at her. To remind me that healing begins in silence. That night, back in his suite, she helped him take off his jacket. He caught her hand in his. Maria, he said softly. Yes. I'm scared. Of what? If you leave, I'll fall again. She looked at him. I'm not leaving. But someone else was about to make sure she did. Backhand index pointing right subscribe if you haven't already. Here is part 6 of 10 of your full 9,000-word Mr. Hope-style melodramatic script. It happened on a Sunday. Church bells echoed faintly across his state. Maria was trimming Daniel's beard by the window, laughing as he winced dramatically when the scissors clicked too close. You act like I'm performing surgery, she teased. I'm just protecting what little dignity I have left, he grinned. They were comfortable now. Too comfortable, because that's when the door opened, and she walked in. Tiffany Blake, Daniel's ex-fiancée, the one who left after the crash. the one who took his company's shares and vanished into silence. She looked exactly as Maria imagined, long legs, high heels, a scent like ambition, and eyes that didn't blink. "Hello, darling," she said sweetly. Maria stepped back instinctively. Daniel's smile vanished. "Tiffany," he said coldly, "why are you here?" She dropped her purse on the sofa like she owned the air. "I heard you're walking again. I wanted to see for myself." Maria gathered her tools and quietly excused herself. Tiffany didn't move, but as Maria passed her, she whispered, "Don't get too comfortable. You're not the first woman he leaned on." Outside, Maria's heart pounded. She hadn't expected her to be beautiful. She hadn't expected her to show up at all. And she hadn't expected that one sentence to hurt so much. She didn't cry. Not yet. Inside, Daniel faced Tiffany. "You walked away when I couldn't." She tilted her head. "You weren't walking. That's exactly why I left." He stood slowly, deliberately. "I don't need your permission to walk anymore." She blinked, clearly not expecting the strength in his voice or body. "I'm here to make things right," she said, brushing her hair back. "You're here because the company want a rebranding photo," he said. "You think standing beside me will make them forget what you did." Tiffany walked closer. "You still have feelings for me." Daniel didn't flinch. "Yes, anger." The next day, Maria was quiet during therapy. Daniel noticed. "You're thinking about her," he said. Maria smiled weakly. "She's your past. I'm just your what? Your present." Daniel reached out and held her wrist. "You are the reason I have a future." But the rumors began again. Whispers. Photos. Tiffany was spotted leaving Daniel's wing at night. A news headline leaked. "Former lovers reunite as CEO walks again." Maria avoided the break room, avoided the nurses, avoided mirrors, until she couldn't anymore. She found Daniel alone in the courtyard. "I need to take a break," she said. He turned to her, confused. "Why?" "I think I've crossed a line. You have a public image to restore. You don't need a bath girl ruining that." He stepped forward. "No Kane. Just him. I'd rather fall again than walk with anyone else." She shook her head. "You'll regret this." He stepped closer. "No, I regret letting you believe you were ever less than everything." But Tiffany wasn't done. She went to the board. Claimed Maria was manipulating Daniel emotionally and financially. Said Maria had been grooming him during his weakest days. It worked. Maria was suspended. The letter came that night. Folded. Cold. Unfair. Until further review, Miss Maria Okoro is to step away from all medical or emotional responsibilities related to Mr. Daniel Cole. She packed her things in silence. Left the estate without a goodbye. Daniel stormed into the director's office. "You let her go?" She was emotionally involved. "I'm standing because she held me up," Daniel said, "while you filed reports. She gave me hope. We're protecting your legacy." "I don't want a legacy. I want her." Maria returned home, to her tiny apartment, to her shared flat and leaking faucet, to silence. The only thing she kept from the estate was Daniel's old puzzle box. She placed it on her shelf, unopened. A week passed, then two. No calls, no letters, just emptiness, until one evening, there was a knock on her door. She opened it slowly and saw him, standing, alone, in the rain. Maria froze, her hand still on the doorknob, her breath stuck somewhere between her chest and throat. Daniel Cole, once broken, once silent, once abandoned by everyone but her, was now standing on her doorstep, in the rain. No driver, no suit, no cane, just him, holding a brown envelope in one hand and a single red hibiscus in the other. "Hi," he said, his voice low. "I didn't know what else to bring." Maria blinked, tears already forming. "What are you doing here?" "You said I'd regret this one day," he said. She nodded, slowly. "I came to tell you you were wrong." He stepped inside, dripping water on the floor. She handed him a towel. He dried off in silence. "I've been standing on my own," he said, but it's felt like falling ever since they took you away." She folded her arms, unsure. "I didn't want to cause damage to your name." He looked at her. "You're the only thing that ever gave it meaning." He held out the envelope. Inside, a gold trim card, embossed, elegant, but simple, her name printed at the top. "You're cordially invited to your own story." She looked up, confused. Then he pulled out a second card. "Dinner, 7 p.m., Friday. Wear red. Don't be late." Maria narrowed her eyes. "You're inviting me to dinner with an envelope?" "No," he smiled. "I'm inviting you back into my life." Friday came. Maria wore her mother's old red dress. The hem had been resewn, the lace restitched by her neighbor. Her earrings were borrowed. Her lipstick was fading. But when she walked into the restaurant Daniel reserved, he stood up in front of everyone and clapped. Others followed, not because they knew her, but because he did. Dinner was quiet at first. Then laughter returned. Then the inside jokes. Then the way her eyes softened every time he said her name. After dessert, he slid a small box across the table. "No, it's not a ring," he said quickly, grinning. "Not yet." She opened it. Inside was a tiny puzzle piece. From the first set she brought him. "I kept it," he said, "because even when the rest was lost, this piece reminded me someone still believed in the full picture." She didn't speak, just reached across the table and held his hand. The next morning, Maria was escorted to the estate, this time in Daniel's personal car. The guards opened the gates without question. The nurses didn't sneer. The staff nodded respectfully, because now everyone knew Maria was no longer just a bath girl. She was a woman who helped rebuild a man's soul. Daniel addressed the board. "I am officially retiring from the company." Gasps. "I've sold my shares. Donated half to spinal injury rehab centers." Murmurs. "And I'm starting something new. With Maria. A foundation for healing, not just bodies, but dignity." He looked around. "Some of you see a former janitor, a cleaner, a girl from nowhere." He smiled. "But I see my future." The media caught on fast. Headlines shifted. "Billionaire CEO quits to build hospital with woman who helped him walk again." From bathwater to boardroom. The love story shaking the nation. Some mocked, some romanticized. But Maria stayed grounded. Every time someone asked her how she managed to change Daniel Cole, she said the same thing. "I didn't change him. I just stayed when no one else would." Then one Sunday morning, while reading to children at a local clinic, she got another envelope. It had no return address, just her name. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Meet me at the garden bench. 5 p.m. No puzzles this time. Just one question." She smiled, shook her head, whispered, "You're impossible," and went. At 5 p.m., the bench was surrounded by candles, and Daniel was waiting on one knee. "Here is part 8 of 10 of your full 9,000-word Mr. Hope-style melodramatic script." Maria froze. There he was, Daniel Cole, on one knee in the garden where they first connected, surrounded by a soft sea of candles and falling petals. The same man who once couldn't move a single toe was now looking up at her, his eyes filled with hope and water. "Mario Coro," he said, voice steady, "you bathed me when I had no dignity. You fed me when I had no strength. You stayed when I had nothing. So I ask now," he reached into his coat, "will you walk with me for the rest of this life?" Maria didn't answer with words. She simply dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered into his neck, "I've already been walking with you. I just didn't know we were going the same way." The wedding planning began that same week. They didn't want glamour or headlines, just intimacy, sincerity. A beach garden, just like the one from Daniel's favorite picture in the rehab album. Wooden chairs, white flowers, lanterns that swayed in the evening wind. Daniel insisted on walking down the aisle unaided. Maria didn't argue. He trained daily, more than ever before. Every step he took was driven by one image. Maria, in white, waiting for him at the altar. But storms don't disappear just because you've healed. The week before the wedding, Maria received a knock on her apartment door. She opened it to find Tiffany, standing with sunglasses on and lips pressed like a loaded gun. Maria didn't flinch. "Wrong house," she said. "I thought we could talk," Tiffany said sweetly. Maria didn't respond. So Tiffany stepped inside without waiting. "You know," she began, circling the room, "I thought I could let it go, let you have your moment. But something about watching a girl who once scrubbed bedpans suddenly becoming Mrs. Cole, well, it doesn't sit right." Maria folded her arms. "You already left him. Why are you here?" Tiffany laughed dryly. "I may have left, but I never lost." She pulled a manila folder from her bag. Inside, court documents, an unsigned prenup, an old medical directive giving Tiffany financial power over Daniel during his coma, and a photo of Maria changing Daniel's clothes, zoomed in suggestively. Maria's hands clenched. "Is this blackmail?" Tiffany smiled. "This is insurance." That evening, Maria confronted Daniel. "I need to know something," she said. Did you sign any papers giving her control?" Daniel shook his head. "That was before. I revoked everything. My lawyer will confirm it. But the photos, let them look. Let the whole world look. I don't care." Maria stared at him. "I do." Daniel stood up slowly and took her hands. "Maria, if you want to walk away to protect your name, I won't stop you. But I'm still walking to that altar, even if I walk alone." Her eyes welled. "You stubborn fool," she whispered. "You couldn't walk at all when I met you." He smiled. "And now look what you've done to me." The wedding day arrived. Sunlight, soft wind, ocean nearby. Daniel wore a navy blue suit, his hair neatly combed back. He had walked every inch of the garden earlier that morning, memorizing the steps so he wouldn't stumble. Maria, in a simple lace dress, stood behind the canopy. Her hands shook. Her heart raced. The guests stood. The music began. And then Tiffany appeared, late, dressed in white, standing at the back like a ghost. She raised her phone. "Live streaming. Let's show the world what redemption looks like," she whispered. Maria saw her, paused, then stepped forward anyway, because no camera, no shadow, no ghost from the past could take away the truth, that this was a love that healed bones and built futures. And everyone watching would see Daniel Cole stand for the first time in front of the woman who never once asked him to. The music played soft and steady. Wind brushed through white flowers tied to the wooden chairs. Guests turned. The world held its breath. And then he rose. Daniel Cole stood, not with crutches, not with a wheelchair in sight, just his spine, his will, his eyes fixed ahead. He walked, step by step, toward the woman who once washed his feet when he couldn't lift his head. The guests gasped. Some cried. The live stream cameras from Tiffany's phone caught it all, unintentionally capturing the very miracle she tried to mock. But Maria, she didn't cry. She just smiled, because she knew something they didn't. This man had stood 100 times in private, but today he stood for her. He reached the altar, paused, took one long breath. Maria stepped forward, met his hand with hers, and whispered, "You made it." He whispered back, "Because you stayed." The officiant began, but Daniel gently raised a hand. "May I speak first?" The man nodded. Daniel turned to the crowd, then to Maria. "I had everything once," he said. "Planes, power, pride." He paused. "Then I lost it all. And when I couldn't even blink for myself, people left. Doctors gave up. My fiancée vanished. My family hid." He looked down, then back up. But then she walked in, a girl with calloused hands, cracked heels, a humming voice, and a sponge that didn't just wash me, it washed the shame. He turned fully to Maria. "You bathed my body, but what you really did was bathe my soul. You reminded me that even broken men deserve music, that healing doesn't come from injections, but presence." He swallowed. "I don't have vows written, but I have scars, and every scar says your name." Maria's lips trembled. I stand here because you believed in legs that hadn't moved in months. And today, I vow to never let those legs take one step away from you." The officiant turned to Maria. She took a deep breath. Her voice was clear. "I didn't know your name when I first saw you. I just knew your eyes were heavy. Your silence was loud. Your body had stopped, but something inside you still wanted to be found." She stepped closer. "You never spoke a word to me, but my heart understood yours. And every sponge I held, every towel I wrung, I wasn't just washing you. I was telling you, you are still here. You still matter." The guests were weeping now. Tiffany stood frozen at the back. And Daniel? He had never stood straighter. The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me." But Daniel cut in gently. "One more thing." He reached into his pocket, pulled out the tiny puzzle piece she once gave him. He held it up to the crowd. "She gave me this before I could speak. Told me the full picture would come together. And she was right." He turned to her. "You are my final piece." He placed it in her hand, then kissed her. The crowd erupted. Laughter, tears, applause. Behind them, ocean waves clapped against the rocks like thunder in celebration. Later that evening, as the sun fell into the water, they danced barefoot on the beach. No photographers, no rehearsed moves. Just Daniel, leaning on her shoulder like he used to lean on parallel bars. And Maria, laughing, because love had never felt this light. Somewhere in the crowd, someone asked, "So what healed him?" And someone answered, "Her hands, her voice, her belief." 1 year later, the garden looked the same, but everything had changed. The wooden bench had fresh white paint now. The hibiscus bush had grown wider, fuller. The same breeze rustled the leaves, but the air no longer smelled like antiseptic and silence. It smelled like life. Maria Cole sat with a notebook in her lap, sunlight dancing across her soft curls. A child giggled in the distance. Staff moved gently across the new garden paths, nurses, volunteers, therapists. But no suits, no gossip, just work, just healing. And at the center of it all, the Cole Foundation for Rehabilitation and Dignity. A hand reached over her shoulder, placed a mug of tea beside her. She didn't look up. "You made it too strong again," she teased. Daniel laughed behind her. "Says a woman who thinks pepper soup cures migraines." She turned to face him. No cane, no limp. Daniel now walked with purpose, not pain. His hair was longer, his eyes brighter. A man rebuilt from the inside out. He sat beside her on the bench, the very bench where he first whispered, "Talk more." Maria looked at him now, smiling gently. "It still surprises me sometimes," she said. "What does? How far we've come. From sponge baths and blinking games to all this." Daniel looked around. The facility stretched beyond the garden. A therapy wing, a music room, a dining hall open to low-income families of patients, and a healing center that offered not just medication, but dignity. "Do you remember the first time you moved your toe?" she asked suddenly. He nodded. "You screamed louder than the ambulance siren." They both laughed, then sat in a warm silence. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a photograph, faded, folded at the corners. He handed it to her. It was the first picture they ever took together, a selfie she snapped without asking, right after he completed his first full lap on the parallel bars. Maria stared at it, eyes softening. "I still look tired in that photo." "You look determined." She chuckled. "That's just a polite word for exhausted." Daniel leaned closer. "You look like the woman I was already falling in love with." She turned to him, something in her gaze shifting. "Do you regret anything?" He paused, then said, "Only that I didn't speak sooner, that I waited until I had voice, limbs, status, when you deserved everything before I even knew your name." Maria blinked slowly. "I don't need regrets. I just need this." She gestured around her, to the garden, to the workers, to the small toddler playing nearby, their adopted daughter, Aoife, now 3. Yes, they had adopted A baby abandoned at the hospital gate months ago. No papers. No record. But Daniel said the moment she wrapped her tiny fingers around his pinky, she just gave me a new reason to keep walking. The little girl ran over now, her bare feet pattering across the grass. "Mommy, Daddy, look," she squealed, holding up a butterfly caught gently between her palms. Maria crouched. "Careful, love. Let's just watch her wings." Daniel knelt beside them, and there they stayed, 3 hearts in the garden. Later that evening, after Aoife had gone to sleep, Daniel and Maria sat by candlelight outside their cottage. Maria held a familiar object, the puzzle box. She turned it slowly in her hands. "I never finished it," she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "The one you brought to my bedside?" She nodded. There was one piece missing. She opened the box. Still incomplete. Daniel smiled faintly. "I remember you told me once. One day, the picture will come together." She nodded. "But maybe it doesn't have to be finished to be beautiful," she whispered. He took her hand. "It is finished," he said gently. "You were the missing piece." Sometimes love walks in wearing a uniform soaked in sweat. Sometimes healing comes in the form of a song, a sponge, and silence. And sometimes the most powerful love stories are not about grand gestures, but quiet endurance, about bathing someone with no promise they'll ever thank you, about walking beside someone long before they can walk beside you. Maria gently wringing a towel beside Daniel's bed, his eyes blinking for the first time, her singing, him lifting one finger, her laughing in the garden, him standing in his suit at their wedding. They said she was just a cleaner, the voice continues. But she became the reason he walked, the reason he rose, and the reason we still believe that love isn't something you find. Sometimes it's something you lift. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of faith, healing, and impossible love. Because every soul, no matter how broken, deserves a chance to stand again. And sometimes all it takes is one person who never lets go.